Uh, what I have here is the code base for the web portal that we have in the Heroku app web servers. And so that is a technology that we use to deploy our web portal. And this is the all of the code that we have. So I'll go one by one. One thing that I do want to note is that don't be confused with the clubs uci.edu. This code is not hosted there. I think that the end goal down the line in a year, 2 years, is for whether that's Bootstrap or React code to be hosted on UCI servers, and so currently in the talks for that. But the focus of this short clip is to go over what is the code base that we have right now, and I'll start from the top. We have here a hidden folder, which is .github. It currently holds a lot of markdown files, and these markdown files are native to GitHub. So GitHub will use these two markdown files to format how we create issues. So if I create a new issue, it's going to tell me, okay, do a bug report or a feature request. That is the markdown file that is in charge of that. That's not actual code that we would be working on. Same thing with workflows. We're currently using that whenever there's code to be tested or merged to a master branch. There's automated testing that happens in the background. And so that's a suite right there. After that, we get to the app folder, and that is the folder that contains all the code pertaining to HTML, CSS, or Bootstrap, or JavaScript, or Python. So if we go here, we have a routes folder. It contains a couple of different routes, and these itself, they do specific jobs for each specific route. So auth takes care of authentication, dashboard takes care about anything that has to, when it loads the dashboard. Points, there's currently not a lot of things happening in the points. It's just kind of dummy data, but anything, any sort of logic that would have to do with points in our dashboard, that would be there. The search py does and currently has logic for the alumni search engine piece to our web portal. And then the settings, there's a lot of logic here in the back end, but basically it's just one feature where you want to update your senior to junior or senior status, or all those sort of things in the web portal. And so I'll load that here so you can see it at one point. Moving a little bit back out, there's a static folder. And in the world of Python Flask, and Flask is the web framework to load a website using Python as a backend. The static folder is where you host your non-Python code. That's where you can leave CSS code. And of course, this is like styling. In the CSS, you have dashboard, anything that has to do, this is styling meant for the dashboard, styling meant for the login, for the points. All of this is styling for that specific case. I'm not sure. Okay, so we have here the styling for the 404 page. That's something that we also have. And this was recently added to our code base. This is JavaScript code to that basically our web portal calls when I log in. We'll see a calendar, but we threw in a bunch of JavaScript code that it calls, images, of course, to the app itself, and then JavaScript as well. Different JavaScript that we have for each specific portion of the website. We have here the templates, and in the world of Flask, the framework for Python. The templates folder is where you hold all the HTML. So previously in the static, it's anything that has to do with like JavaScript or CSS. The template is all about the framework. So that's your HTML portion. We have here the base HTML. I believe all of these inherit from this base HTML that we have. But for instance, like the dashboard HTML, Yep, it extends from the base HTML, and so that's just code that's there. Um, a lot of this is it's meant to be reusable, um, and I know that there's other frameworks that may be better than this, even React. But even if you are able to, if you know how to really use templating systems in Flask, it's a really great thing. So yeah, a lot of different pages themselves. But for instance, they shouldn't be too long in themselves. You could create smaller components as well. Um, but yeah, there's authentication. So these are separate HTMLs that load the authentication page, the one that was before. Um, so this slash loth login, the backend, of course, is taken care of with OAuth authentication, and we have that API. Um, and so after that, we have a utils folder. We've been experimenting a lot with different APIs like Google Drive. And so we have Google Drive Python code here that makes references to uh, that API itself. And we try to use it in the dashboard. Uh, we ideally don't want to store client IDs, but this one is a dummy one. So at one point, I want to hide this in the Heroku server where we have all the rest of the other environment variables. Same thing with the temp folder. That's something that we were just experimenting with. The underscore dunder init file, that's kind of like the main to all of these all of the Python code itself. Uh, it is in what Python and Flask, what they consider the app factory. So this is where the app is kind of like instantiated and created. So you have here app name. We give the app itself different attributes like secret keys, and these are things that you would download from Slack, um, and it's a .env file. Um, then we have separate upload things that we were testing with. It should not mess with the current production state. And then there's other configurations, a lot of configurations here in regards to the app. One of the main portions that I want to bring your attention to is just this registering of the different routes. I think that's really necessary for our routes themselves. You want to, when we make like a new route, for instance, right now we have dashboard and a settings route and an authentication route. So we import them and we use from like app.routes import, dashboard. Um, and so we put them in here. And so we this is kind of like it prepares for the routes. That is one thing that I do know, and it has to register like the sort of blueprint. So this is a lot of like Flask stuff. It's already made. That's one of the good things. But the core of it, how it is served, and I think I'll go. I don't want to get in too deeper, but one of the core things that Flask provides is that you are able to say app.route into you're making a new route here, and this is the home route, and it's always necessary to have your home route, and we return the login page. So if you were to go to /home, it would return the home HTML /points. If you go to /dashboard, that's what it would take you to. Really curious because I've never seen the dash home, and that's something I think we don't have a direct HTML button or a bootstrapped button that takes you there, but I just wonder. Okay, interesting. That's a new feature that I was not even aware about. So we need the admin team will definitely look into adding points there. Um, we had a slash team. It returns the team HTML. So whenever a web browser uh, goes to our Heroku server, and the Heroku server gets a request for slash teams, this is what they're going to be returning. They're going to return the team HTML, and so there you have it. And then the 404. So this is kind of like the core main, right, program. This is the web server that serves all the different HTML. So that's the init. And then we have commands py. These are uh, different configurations that have already been set up. So not a lot to touch here. It's a lot of Flask. It's a lot of different like Flask configurations. I myself am not aware about, but we do have a previous lead that knows Guillermo. And then we have extensions py inside this. Seems like it's setting up configurations for the, yep, it's initializing. We use another tool called Codebase, and it's a Python module that you can import so you could talk to your Firebase, which is a Google NoSQL database. So it authenticates and initializes the app, and these are separate things that we want to include. And then one thing that's good to know is that here we kind of have to lay out all the different attributes that a user has, like a Firebase user. So it's kind of like the schema that we have here. Each one has a user ID, an email, a first name, and all of that. I think one thing that we're going to be adding is a paid status, because that might be added with the payments team. And so that's it for the app folder. Outside of that, there's different things. We have a dependabot which automatically triggers and it knows when dependencies have updates. I think this comes from like the React world, because it has a package lock JSON. So there's from time to time there's a bot that tells you, hey, like there's an update. Please press this button to uh, create the updates. So that folder, contains a lot of that. So automated stuff there. There's other files, for instance, the .getignore, which is also a hidden file in Linux, and it tells you, what type of files to ignore and to never put into GitHub. This is something really good. And we have the hidden Firebase file. It will still be, when I mean hidden, it means that it still be there, right? But like when you ask your command line to print it out, it doesn't show it. You have to give it specific commands. The project, it setting up configurations of what the name of our Firebase name project is. We have the license, a manifest. This is important for our Heroku server, and that is basically the machine that serves the Python app, and it needs to know these certain configurations, telling it, what are the root folders for different things. So we wouldn't, developers wouldn't be touching these at all. Same thing with the proc file. Is something that the web servers require. It's just a file that's needed to be there. The README, of course, lays out the whole installation process, how you could download the code and run it locally on your computer. The firebase.json, I think this is a place where we can experiment and add. There's different things that could be added here. I'm not sure, but there's pretty neat Firebase features, I'm assuming. These are the rest of these were made by a Bash developer, and so these are scripts that are called by certain installation process that you would use here. For instance, if you're using Windows, you want to use the Git Bash program to install this as well to run it. Same thing with install with Linux. These are just installation scripts that were made. You could take a look at them as well, as the source code is there. The requirements txt in Python is where you list out all the dependencies, things that you want to import, and so they're just laid out there. I can make a whole separate video on how to collect the current ones that are being used in your system. But these are the current ones that are being used. And every time we add a new dependency or something new that we have to import, we want to make sure that we're using virtual environments so we can record what are our dependencies. And so if you haven't read about these in Python, it's something really good to take a look at. The run app is another script. Basically, when you run app script, it runs the app. Same thing with Windows. If you're using Windows, it's the command that you're going to be using to run the app. And so that's what we have. If you have any suggestions, questions, or concerns, just feel free to reach out to me on Slack or email, but Slack is preferable. So, yeah, thanks for watching this code overview.